Hello everybody. I hope everybody's having a good day today. You know, I believe that even the most spiritual anti-religious person can become religious in their beliefs. At times I have gotten religious and closed-minded. Most people can be placed in two categories. They either view everything written in a spiritual sense, or they see everything in a carnal, literal sense. I've come to understand and believe in duality and a blending of the two. I believe in the supernatural. If we try and link everything in our spirituality, we put it in our hands and efforts, and some have even removed Christ from the equation. It's always Christ's supernatural works in us that matters. Before I start the main part of today's upload, I would like to share with you some supernatural things that I have experienced in my life, starting at a very young age. I'm sure that after I share with you, some will say that I have been deceived by demons. And then there's going to be others that get it because of their similar experiences. I will let the fruit that Father manifests through me be my defense. In 1971, I was 4 years old. My family and I lived on top of a mountain in Arkansas. During the winter of 1971, my family experienced something supernatural that until this day we can't really explain. One night we were all sleeping. My sister and I slept in the same room. My little brother was only 6 months old at the time, and he was in a crib in our room as well. My sister and I woke to the walls of our house shaking and vibrating, and the pictures and things hanging on the walls were rattling. There was a sound of 4 people, maybe 5, laughing and singing. My sister and I were terrified, and we both bolted from the room and ran to my mom and dad's room and dove into the bed with them. My dad was already in the middle of getting up and getting dressed, and he grabbed his shotgun and was going outside to see what was going on. We had 2 large dogs that would always bark and warn us if there was something wrong. These 2 dogs were in the corner on the porch, cowered down, whimpering with their hair standing up on their backs. We lived on an old dirt road, and our nearest neighbor was miles away, and there was no dust on the road. There was a neighbor down the way that had a hog pen with about 12 hogs in it. The hogs were squealing and making a loud commotion. The next day, my dad asked everyone who lived on the mountain if they had heard anything or experienced anything like we had. No one had heard a thing. For days after this, my dad would be outside working, and he would catch an eerie feeling and get the shivers because he felt like someone or something was watching him. A few days after this, I began to have a reoccurring dream that I continued to have until I was at the age of 9. In the dream, my sister and I were in an old red GMC pickup. Now I understand I was only 4 years old and my sister was 6, but I was driving this old truck down an old mountain road, and my sister and I saw what we thought was an animal or a wolf run across the road. I stopped the truck and I grabbed a gun that was back on the back window of the truck, and I ran out in the woods to see if I could see it. My sister was behind me. I remember I saw rustling in the leaves by some bushes, and I shot into those leaves. and I ran over to see if I had shot anything. And whenever I got there, I discovered my uncle. My uncle had a unique name. His name was Lord Prince. I had shot my uncle and killed him. After the first time having this dream, I became aware of death. Remember, I was only 4 years old, and death was something that had never crossed my mind. For the next week or so, I would not leave my mother's side because I knew that one day I was going to lose her to death. A short time after this encounter, I began to see patterns in things, and later I began to be obsessed with counting. A few years after this encounter, my family and I moved back to Texas. In those days, we played outside until after dark. I remember one evening, I was in a field in front of our house playing, and I remember looking up into the sky, and I seen what I thought was a star. But then this star began to move towards me, and I got afraid, and I began to run away. And as I was running, I was looking behind me, and at the last moment before I tripped and fell, I saw this star break into 3 pieces. One piece went over my head, and the other 2 broke off to the left and to the right as I turned my head towards the ground in order to catch my fall. The next thing that I remember was my mother calling my name. I remember picking myself up from the field, not knowing how long I'd been laying there. I remember going back to the house and not mentioning anything about this to my mom or my dad because I didn't understand what had happened. At this time, I was 9 years old, and after this encounter, I stopped having the reoccurring dream of shooting my uncle, and I began to have dreams that would come true. The first dream that I had was a warning dream of baby snakes, copperheads. I remember one morning I woke up and I was going to go out to our garage and look in the freezer to get something to eat. As I began to open up the door, there was like a strobe light that went off in my head. And when I opened the door, I looked down and there was 3 baby copperheads on the floor. I was barefooted and those snakes would have bitten me. Baby snakes are more venomous and toxic than the adults. I would have been in trouble. The next dream that I had was of another snake. This was a cottonmouth. In the dream, I was walking home from school and I was going through a pasture, and a cottonmouth struck at me and grabbed my pants. And I remember running away from it and shaking the snake off my pants and seeing the venom on my pants. The next day, I was walking home from school and I took a shortcut. I always carried a school bag with our school logo on it. I remember going down into a gully to cross a creek, and as I was crossing the creek, a cottonmouth grabbed hold of my pants legs, and I dropped those books on top of it. As I climbed to the top of the gully, I looked at my pants, and they were full of venom. As I got older, I continued to have more and more dreams that would come true, and some of those dreams were scary. And I had a prayer that I would say in hopes that this prayer would prevent the dreams from coming true that I would have. As I got older and into my 20s, I started to work as a welder, and I became friends with a man who was getting his pilot's license. I had never seen the airplane that he practiced in for his license. One night, I had a dream that he had crashed his plane, and it was a Cessna that was red and white. The next day, I went to work, and I warned him. I said, "Look, I know you're going to think that I'm crazy, but I have dreams that come true, and last night I dreamt that you crashed your plane." He looked at me and laughed. The very next day, he crashed that plane and flipped it after a crash landing, and it got hung up in a barbed wire fence. He came to me after that and said, "If you have any more dreams concerning me, you always let me know." When I was 18 months old, I broke my leg in an accident playing with a dog. I'm telling you this story because it ties into the next story. On the day that my daughter was born, I was in the examination room with my daughter and the nurse. She had just been born. I remember my mother-in-law and my mom were viewing us through the observation window. As the nurse was weighing and measuring my daughter, a sharp pain went through my leg, and I remember wincing and grabbing my leg and nearly falling down. I turned to look at my mom and mother-in-law, and they were asking me what was wrong, and I shook my head and said, "I don't know." As I left the examination room, there was a call that said that I had an emergency. I picked up the phone, and it was my grandmother telling me that my sister was bringing my son to the hospital, that he had just broken his right leg. The really odd thing about it was that he was 18 months old, approximately the same age that I was when I broke my leg. I've shared these stories with you guys today because I want you to know that yes, I do believe in the supernatural because I have experienced it firsthand. Now let's move on to the main purpose of this upload. As humans, we only see 20% of the light spectrum. Our vision is very limited. So in other words, we are 80% blind to what is really going on around us. This made me remember the story of Daniel when he had a vision and was seeking answers to it through prayer and fasting. An angel came to him and told him that he had to battle 21 days and that the archangel Michael had to come and help him before he could reach him to give him understanding to his vision. Then there is the story of Elisha, who prayed to God to open the eyes of the servant so that he might see that there was an army of angels, chariots of fire, in the mountains and all around Elisha. After thinking about these two accounts, I remembered something that I had read about a few years back. In the year 1561, the people of Nuremberg, Germany, witnessed a battle in the sky, and someone recorded the event on a wood carving for print. 5 years later, the same thing happened in Switzerland. I believe that there are glitches in the matrix that at times allow us to see the unseen, and at times God gives us the ability to see glimpses as well. I also believe that there are other realms all around us, but separate from us, in other dimensions. And I believe that at one time there were dimensional doorways or gateways that were open to these places. In Viking mythology, there was Thor, the god of thunder. His father was Odin, also known as Osiris. Remember the one-eyed symbolism. In the Viking legend, there are 9 realms, and Earth had been blocked off or isolated from the other realms. I've said before that Hollywood loves to reveal truths disguised as science fiction and fantasy. In the next photo is a glyph of Enki, the Sumerian god, stepping through what appears to be a dimensional gateway. I believe these gateways or doorways were located in several areas across this realm. Here is an example of one of those doorways. It's located in Peru. It's a door into nowhere, but legend has it that if you hold the key, aka Solomon's seal, you could step through to another world. Shiva, also known as Saturn, is oftentimes shown dancing in what appears to be a dimensional doorway, or Stargate. This statue of Shiva is on the grounds of C.E.R.N. in Geneva, Switzerland. Remember the event that was recorded in 1566, the Battle in the Sky? When I saw this, I immediately thought of the movie and television series Stargate. I believe that with the help of the forbidden knowledge given to man by the archons, that we are now trying to open up those doorways once again. I believe that's the whole purpose of C.E.R.N. You don't spend billions of dollars to smash particles. The truth is stranger than fiction. I hope this upload has enlightened you. I love you all. God bless.